Hello, I'm Tristan Higgins, founder of Metaclusive LLC. Welcome to the Metaclusive Leadership Series. I am so excited to be able to have such an interview series. The purpose of this series is to introduce us to diversity, equity, inclusion, and intersectionality experts and leaders, pioneers in the field. The hope is that we can learn from them, have them chat with us a little bit, give us some of their best practices, some do's and don'ts, what things have worked for them. The word metaclusive means a sense of belonging that transcends diversity and inclusion, where all are represented, accepted, and valued. We like to say that it's the goal of enlightened entities worldwide. Today, we're kicking off this leadership series with Janet Fiore of the Sierra Group. I am so excited that Janet has chosen to join me and be my first victim. I first met Janet after hearing her speak several times, and I was just blown away. Her approach, her sharing of personal experience was so wonderful that I felt an immediate connection to her. A lot of people don't know this, but I have some significant disabilities in my life. And so her focus on this issue I found to be just invaluable. I introduced myself to Janet, and boy, was I lucky. Janet is really amazing, and I really want to welcome her today. Janet, thank you for being here. Will you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Tristan, thank you so much. And I'm really honored that you chose to invite me to your program. Likewise, meeting you and sharing a commitment to inclusion of everyone in the workforce just really holds a passion. So I'm thrilled to be your first inaugural interview. And I'm always super excited to be able to talk about Sierra Group and the work we've done since 1992 to help individuals with disabilities get the accommodation they need, the training, and then the workplace that's welcoming and inclusive for them to come along. 1992 is a long time ago. I must have started as a young child.
You were like 3, I'm guessing.
Exactly. I think I was 4, I'll admit.
Child prodigy.
Exactly. But I was a child who had a mission to make a difference in the world. I wanted to go into social work, I thought, and my mother told me, don't get into other people's business, Janet, mind your own. So I thought, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. My mom said, you should be a teacher, you'll get summers off. I really should have listened to her. But instead, I took my passion to help people with my serial entrepreneurial roots that started with my grandfather, who immigrated from Romania and started his own trucking business. I knew that I was going to do a company that helped people and changed the world. I'm so excited that I've been able to work with people with disabilities and employers across the country since 1992. When it comes to inclusion, though, even the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that have become, thankfully, popular in today's culture, only 7% of them bother to include workers with disabilities.
7%.
7%. That's according to a PricewaterhouseCoopers CEO study that was done in 2015.
And I don't know if
not included inclusive group.
Oh, do you know what percentage of the population in general has some sort of disability or identifies?
63 million Americans have a disability according to the census statistic. Basically, 1 in 5 people that you meet is likely to be someone with a disability. More than 60% of disability is non-apparent. You can't tell when you look at me today that I'm a person with 4 disabilities under the ADA. Wow.
That is amazing. 60% of disabilities are not visible.
Yes.
Well, certainly that's my experience. You know, as I mentioned in the intro, I have some significant disabilities that involve mobility, and I can't tell you how many times I've been stared at as I get out of my car in the sometimes disabled handicap spot where I have my placard, and that sort of shaming that I feel is really difficult. Not that I would rather be in a wheelchair, mind you, but it's a particular kind of challenge, wouldn't you say, to have that invisible, as it were, disability?
Absolutely. I personally was getting out of my car at a grocery store parking lot when someone really accosted me verbally with how dare I park in a spot that I didn't need. It's tough. Sensitivity and awareness are really important for everyone to know if people like you and I can go about our day feeling good about ourselves, not needlessly shamed.
Do you think that that sort of extra mantle of shame affects employees when they come into the workplace?
Absolutely, Tristan. I know it does. When a person has a disability that's not apparent and they need to request an accommodation to be able to do a good job at their job, the first obstacle they have to overcome is their personal fear of being rejected, labeled, or shamed because they're admitting they have a disability. Often, people don't ask until they're in trouble at work, and then an employer, understandably so, feels like, oh, now you're saying you have a disability now that you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's that barrier of understanding that's really a hard one to overcome.
Now, I know that in the Sierra Group, you work with, this is just one of the issues. Can you share a little bit about the approach that you have? And first of all, what is it that you do? I know you are helping millions of people and
Mhm.
millions of employers, or hopefully. How do you go about that? What kinds of services do you provide? Who comes to see you?
Thank you. Thanks for asking. We serve all sides of the disability equation. We serve vocational rehabilitation professionals that are helping folks with disabilities go to work. We
Okay.
also serve individuals who have disabilities and need training or accommodation. And moreover, my passion and the part of the company that I lead is the employer services division. We do ADA consultation work to help a company figure out that interactive process and make an accommodation come together. We also do in-person, on the phone, and online training for business customers. That's our, believe it or not, fastest growing line of business that we've been involved in for about 5 years now.
The online training component.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the COVID environment that made that successful. You've been doing that for about 5 years.
We have, and when COVID hit, it was a big, thank goodness we're already online trainers.
Mm.
And I have to give a shout out to the resiliency of our learners with disabilities that used to come to our bricks and mortar school to learn computers and business skills. We immediately transitioned them to our business platform for online training and didn't miss a beat. People with disabilities, as I like to say, are wired for adaptability. So the technology changes worked out really, really well. But Tristan, I know you've had a chance to see our newest Disability Etiquette for Everyone online course.
I have. I was really impressed. Thank you for letting me take the class. Obviously, people can find that. We're going to put your information. What is exciting to you about that new class? I know you have that pride of ownership. Tell us why.
And pride of ownership definitely starts with the day I decided to leave the world of law and insurance and step into helping people with disabilities navigate the workplace. That's something that I found my niche. I figured out where I belonged in life. And we started with what I'll call the harder one-to-one consulting work of doing accommodations. Out of that, we realized so many businesses say again and again, how do I actually talk to a person with a disability? What should I say? How does language matter? What should I not say? Does the law allow me to ask certain questions? And what is all this digital accessibility that I keep hearing about? Am I going to make a mistake as I recruit people with disabilities, especially when you're telling me, I can't tell by looking at you if you even have one. It's all sort of people's desire to do the right thing and be inclusive has almost worked against inclusion and disability because it's brought up a natural fear. Will I say the right thing? So we started going over what is our most common requested service from a business customer. In reviewing years of data, it was clear 9 out of 10 people say, before we start training or accommodating or recruiting, we need sensitivity, awareness, and etiquette. So we backtracked and created a 1-hour course that teaches disability etiquette for everyone. That's why I'm excited, because it's easy to take, it's quick, it's 4 segments. Anybody can walk away with an aha moment or 2, and hopefully not just a heart that's opened, but a mind that knows exactly what to do and say to include workers with disabilities.
Now, I know you said sensitivity training, and sometimes people shy away from that, right? The idea that I'm sure you've heard it, as I have, oh, I have to go to another sensitivity training. But in this case, you really mean that in the sense of being sensitive to vocabulary. Can you give an example of what you mean by that?
Absolutely. One of the things
Wonderful.
that we cover in this disability etiquette course are the words you should say. I was on vacation recently with a couple of childhood friends. One of them said, "Oh, you help people who are bound to a wheelchair." I said, "Really? I've never had to work with anyone who is strapped in, but..." And then I said, "I have an idea. I will grant you access to my disability etiquette course, and then you'll know what I'm talking about."
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay.
Words don't mean everything, but they say a lot about what we're really thinking. And rather than me lecturing about it or giving tips of what to say and what not to say, we took these questions to 20 people with disabilities that come to our online classes or come to our on-site classes and said, when you hear the word disability etiquette, what does it mean to you? That's my favorite part of the course, when people tell you their own perspective of how words matter and how really the actions that people take are what mean the most.
I know that people who come to your course will hear all of these answers, but just for the bound to a wheelchair example, what would be better for people to say?
The person is a wheelchair user, or that person gets around in a wheelchair. Like that person walks really fast. You know people's footsteps when you hear them coming. Some people walk slow, some people saunter, some people get around in a wheelchair. It's just a means of going from point A to point B.
So in that rephrasing, you're starting with the person. And I learned that from your course, right? So you're saying the person uses a wheelchair or is assisted by a device. And is that an important part of people watching this should understand when it comes to that sensitivity?
Absolutely. Person first language. You don't say that girl's blind. You say there's a woman who's blind. She's a woman first. She's a person. My friend who happens to be blind. My employee who happens to have MS. Not, oh, that person is disabled. A person is a person, and then the condition comes after you acknowledge who they are. I'm a CEO, I'm a woman, and I have a couple of disabilities that I work around day by day.
What would you say is your biggest challenge in doing this work? I mean, 100%, right? You do this all the time for yourself, now as a business. What's your biggest challenge?
I'm going to answer that question on 2 sides of the equation.
Okay.
The biggest challenge that most of the world acknowledges is awareness and willingness to open a company's doors and realize that disability is just a part of me. That's the soft skill piece. Okay. Honestly, the harder challenge is finding an accommodation that's going to respect productivity, technology, skills, and get the job done. Disability has both sides of the equation. You have to be open-minded and willing to be inclusive. And once you are, you actually have to know things like digital accessibility. Don't program your website so that a person who's visually impaired can't hear everything that's on there. So to me, the harder struggle day to day is the technical aspect of making things accessible, yet by focusing there for 25 years, I was missing until recently the soft side of how you have to have an open mind and an open heart. So I'm pretty much 50-50 on which is hardest. I'm excited that we're able to offer what we call the short course to learn the disability etiquette. For the recruiting world, we have a certification, an 18-hour course where you can become certified as a disability recruiter. That's where you lift up the hood and you learn all the strategies and tools that you actually need. So 1 hour to get the soft side a little deeper than you have it, 18 hours, and you're going to know almost everything that we've learned in the past 20-some years.
So the longer course would be for corporations that are wanting to open their doors to embrace the 60, did you say 68 million Americans who have some sort of disability, for perhaps employers who realize they're missing out, right? They're missing out on a giant talent pool by not having that openness. That would be that's what they're learning there?
Totally. That course is called Disability Recruiter Certification, so the name sort of says it. It's for recruiters to learn how to go ahead and recruit workers who have disabilities. And a lot of corporations who send their talent acquisition and recruiters to get that certification follow up, and D&I professionals and line managers and HR takes the Disability Etiquette for Everyone 1 hour class that is quick and easy. Then the whole company is speaking the language of inclusion, but the certified recruiter actually knows what to do when they find out a person who's deaf is coming on site for an interview.
It's interesting because I think, I mean, my background is from the corporate world. In my new capacity, right, in helping companies to be more embracing of all types of diversity so that employees feel they belong and they really can bring not just their whole selves, but their best selves to the office. When I talk to people about disability, I think what they are focused on are things like the front door, right? That if the front door isn't easy enough to open because it's too heavy, or it doesn't have an automatic open, or they don't have ramps, that I think is really where people they seem to be stuck. Do you have any suggestions for how to help people that are passionate, like you and I are, to kind of maybe break through that a little bit in their companies? Because what I see is companies trying to do the right thing, but maybe focused on slightly the wrong thing, right? Just, well, we can't afford to put in a new bathroom. But that really shouldn't, I mean, they need to do that, but that really shouldn't be the thing that stops them, right?
It shouldn't be. And, that harkens back to 1990 when the ADA passed. The ADA will be 30 years old on July 26, 2020. It's 30 years ago thinking. Of course, the door has to be accessible to get inside. That door has been legally mandated accessible for 30 years now. It's time we think about how do all of our accessible features and protocols come together. That's actually a consulting service that we offer. We go into it and look at how does every aspect of your workplace include or maybe put up an obstacle for a person who has a disability. People put signs up all the time, special lunch at the cafeteria today. Well, that's great as long as you're sighted. Are you bothering to maybe send an accessible email to everyone or put a verbal message out? Lunch today in the cafeteria, sponsored by the Diversity and Equity Board. You have to think variety of messaging in order to include everybody every time you put out any sort of announcement.
That's amazing. I hadn't even thought of that. And it's one of the things I love about having met you is that I get to learn from you. And Janet, one of the things that I have learned from you recently, and I may be really behind the curve, is this concept of alt text on photos. And it seems to me like that's something that somebody watching this might be able to fix this afternoon. Would you please explain to us, or at least to me, what that means and what we're talking about with that?
I'd be happy to, Tristan. If you have a photograph of me and you want to put it up on your website later today and say, Janet Fiore, CEO of the Sierra Group, joins me as a guest. When you post the picture, you take the picture and you save it to your hard drive. And pictures are going to default to a saving something like JPEG.75. If you throw that onto your website, it will say, JPEG.75. And when Tess, who works with me, who's blind, goes to your website, she's going to go, oh, JPEG number 75. She's going to have no idea, Tristan, that you put up a picture of the CEO of her company. Easily, instead of letting the default say the default name, just type between the parentheses, they're double parentheses, type photo of Janet Fiore, CEO of the Sierra Group, talking with me on my interview. That tells the person who's blind, who dwells their cursor on the image that's posted is a picture of Janet and why it was posted. It's simple,
is that something that Tess would, I mean, this is a silly question, but I'm guessing Tess would really enjoy being able to see, as it were, through a different way, everything that is on that page?
Absolutely. People who are visually impaired see with their ears. If you type the words, they can hear the words and then they know what it is that's being depicted. Otherwise, she doesn't know what you're putting up there. You might be putting up an ad inviting everybody to a free offer, and she would not be aware that you put up a photograph that embedded an image of a free offer. You have to type in text whatever message is visually portrayed if you want everybody to be able to hear it, if the way they see is through their ears.
Is this something that most, I mean, I know a lot of companies use PR firms or marketing firms and online, firms to create these campaigns for them. Are a lot of these firms on board with this, or is this still kind of new? In other words, if I'm the professional who's asking, the other professional company to do my ads, are they going to know about this, or is this something I should proactively be asking about?
It's something we have to proactively talk about. As quickly as the curb cuts came down to let people in the front door physically, the barrier of building without these simple accessibility features, they go up every single day. People don't know that they need to say in words what is otherwise portrayed in HTML lingo that only a programmer understands. It's a barrier day in and day out. And when you think about people trying to go online and purchase something, they want to know what's online for sale as much as somebody who is not an assistive technology user wants to know.
So then businesses are really missing out on the purchasing power as well, right? Of those 68 million Americans, because I think maybe there's this old-fashioned image that you have somebody with you who's reading to you or helping you, and that's not correct. I'm assuming, right? Most of our, 68 million Americans are using the internet exactly like you and I are using the internet, all by themselves with a computer, and they're missing out on that amazing shirt or that amazing service or that product. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely fair to say. We actually added, our disability etiquette course was originally only going to have 3 segments. We added a digital accessibility component, and I struggled with that because it's a class about etiquette. That etiquette is how you approach the world and how you make people feel welcome. How welcoming are people if you're building a website they can't get on? I believe digital accessibility is a huge component of etiquette and inclusion.
Well, one of the things that I like to talk to my clients about, right, is the sort of dollars and cents. And if I can arm the DEI and I, as I like to say, professional with the information that this could actually drive their business, right? They could make more money in whatever it is they're trying to sell by including these Americans, and other nationalities as well, of course, who aren't able to really experience their marketing, then that's good for their business. And so I really appreciate that, because I think that helps. Sometimes companies aren't able to do something just because it's the right thing, right? That's why we have to have the laws, and that's why we have to, people like you and I go and talk to them about how it's good for them. So thank you for that. Let me turn to a positive thing. Tell us, please, or me, what is your greatest joy in the work that you do?
My happiest moment every day that it happens is when a person with a disability gets through the interview process and they call up to say they got the job. When we're physically with our team, we have a bell that we ring, and now we have an online bell and emojis on our phone. When somebody gets hired because everything that we talk about and work for comes together, that is my absolute greatest joy.
Would you do us the favor of giving us an example, maybe some other situation you're really proud of? Of course, without using their names or protecting them, but one of these experiences.
Absolutely. I'll actually tell you a quick story about a gentleman named Abdullah, and if you go to our website, you'll see his video there.
Oh,
He's
great.
a gentleman that was born without hands. His arms end at his elbows, and he also has a deformity that affects his ability to speak a little bit. Abdullah came to us and wanted to work in stock and warehousing. He didn't have any computer skills, and he really wanted to be able to learn technology so that he could get a job working in inventory and stock. Abdullah got the skills that he needed. He got the confidence, he got the business approach. He was able to learn to drive a car with accommodations. He went on his interview and got hired in the job of his choice because he had the skills, and the employer knew that disability is only a part of who he was. It was not going to interfere with his ability to do the job, show up on time, and get everything done. The fact that when he went on the interview, the HR person said, "We're going to presume you're qualified to do the job with whatever accommodation you need because all of your online testing said you are, and you're here telling us that you can." They presumed his ability. They didn't stop because they couldn't figure out how it would work. He's worked there over a year now, and the company couldn't be happier.
Oh, that's amazing. And I know that I've heard you tell a statistic about the cost of an average accommodation. So, you have some companies that are thinking, oh my gosh, if I had somebody like Abdullah come to work for me, I might have to create all kinds of special equipment and it would be very expensive. And even though they're not allowed to think of that in that process,
Right.
sometimes they do. What can you tell us about the sort of typical cost to do accommodations for employees?
And there are statistics, Tristan, that speak to typical cost. Personally, I like to say the cost is zero to whatever it costs, and it depends on what the job is and what needs to be accommodated. Statistically, the job accommodation network says most accommodations cost $600 or less. The reason I hesitate to state that emphatically is most workers that need an accommodation, particularly if they're assistive technology users, are unemployed. The cost, whatever it is something that the state vocational rehab department might be able to help absorb. Sometimes it's just learning how to make a part of your business work for a person with a disability. And once you make even a costly accommodation one time, you're now open to use that accommodation again and again for future workers. So cost is, we can say it's $600 or less because that is a national statistic that I believe.
Okay.
Or we can say, what's the cost not to include people?
Yes.
The cost of not doing it, that's the astronomical cost.
Yes. That feels like the mic drop right there. All right. So I think I want to, I've been keeping you for a long time. So let me just ask just another question or two. And what I would like to ask you is, for any employers who are watching, who are listening to our interview, what would you like them to take away from this?
I would like them to think about what they may not know and go ahead and take a step forward to learn something. It's the celebration this summer of 30 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Come online and visit one of our free Thursday courses that we're going to offer. 30 minutes conversation about the ADA at 30. Talk about it. Ask your HR department. Take a look at your own recruiting website. Is it fully accessible for people with disabilities. Take one action that you've never taken to put yourself in a point where maybe you're not too comfortable finding out the answer, but go ahead and ask that one question regarding inclusion and accessibility. Then don't be afraid of the answer. I've been doing this work for over 25 years now. If I can figure it out, anybody can. It's not rocket science, it's passion, determination, and it's a skill set that anybody can learn.
Sort of a diversity muscle, as it were.
Exactly. Learn the attitude, get the skill. Put the two together, and people with disabilities will become employed.
Well, and it's part of the national conversation right now, the idea that we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Having uncomfortable conversations. And so I really appreciate that. What about for any interviewees or candidates or employees who are watching this? What would you like them to take away from our talk?
We do host a website called recruitdisability.com. Candidates with disabilities looking for jobs can go there and search, and they will find businesses who've proactively posted their jobs on recruitdisability.com. These are people that obviously want to hire folks with disabilities. That's a great resource. They can always, if they're in Philadelphia, they can contact us or visit our training school. But we are now offering training and assessments to individuals with disabilities via absolute virtual modalities as well. So we're looking to open up our Philadelphia training to the entire state of Pennsylvania and ultimately the rest of the country. So if you have a disability or if you want to hire a person with a disability, check out thesierragroup.com, check out the sierragroupfoundation.org, or send an email, onlinetraining@thesierragroup.com. Our team will receive it. We'll route people where we can best route them. And hopefully, collaboratively, we can drive up inclusion.
Can you say the email one more time for me?
Yes, the best email to contact us is onlinetraining@thesierragroup.com.
Okay. So let me give you the chance to have that last word. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Tristan, I want to add that I am excited every day I get to talk about including people with disability. It means a lot to me, and it's really important that in your mission with Metaclusive to include all people, that you did your debut interview about disability and inclusion. Instead of being left out or thought about last, you made us first. Thank you.
Oh, Janet, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really important to me, and I've learned even in our talk today. I just want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank anybody who's watching for participating in the Metaclusive Leadership Series. Please check out Janet. She said she's available to talk with you. She has a team who's ready to do that. And I thank you so much, Janet. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.